so that you could share with your family and others on Shavous. But before that, let's finish this section of the Maimer. We are on page 320. Well, we actually finished this, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we finished. Yeah, we finished.
Yeah, we finished this. Okay, so the next section of the Maimer is really a new idea, a new section. So I'm going to leave it for now and talk about Shavous. You'll have some food for thought and sharing. And this is the famous question that is asked by many. I believe the Vilna Gaon asked the question, and even the Balata and the Rebbe asked the question. I'm sure others do. And the question is, why do we stay up all night Shavous? And I believe I've told you already that try your best to stay up. If you don't have the koyach, get up early morning before dawn if you can, and say some tikkun. And if you go to the mikveh, or I don't know if the mikvehs are open and closed there, go to the mikveh, because it's brought down in Kabbalah that the chut shel chesed, the thread of kindness, shines at dawn time. That's number one, in general, every day. And number two, it says particularly Shavuos night, when the Yidden received the Torah, it was at dawn time. So therefore, if possible, we try to kind of go to the mikveh at dawn time. But today, many people go before dawn, or there's different times of dawn. There's brought in the Shulchan Aruch, there's the early dawn, the middle dawn, the late dawn. So you can, choose which dawn you want to follow to go to the mikveh and then hit the sack and get up before Shema. Very important to make sure to either stay up till when you're allowed to say Shema, or to lie down, but to make sure you get up early, because it's early, So if you're going to sleep into 10, you're probably missing Shema, and maybe even to 9. I don't know the time. So you have to be cognizant of that, because that's a mitzvah d'oraisa. 1 second.
Sorry, 9:06 here.
9:06. So you see again here, someone will stay up, say tikkun, go to the mikveh, then lay down and get up 9:20. The whole night is really not worth it. You've missed a mitzvah d'oraisa, Shema, which is universal for all Yidden. So everything has to be, put into perspective. Don't stay up at night on behalf of sleeping in and missing Shema, chas v'sholem. Okay. So the answer to the question, the basic answer given, is our ancestors. They went to sleep at night, and before the Torah was given. Now, why did they do that? So, b'pashta, simply speaking, they did it because they wanted to be prepared. And it's brought in Svarim, the best way to experience an experience is through the dreamlike state. It's brought in the Svarim that the dreamlike state is when the mind, the seichel, doesn't inhibit the reality. During the day when we're awake and conscious, our mind, as we've been discussing, the rhyme and reason, comes up with all kinds of arguments and positions and obscures the emes, the kernel, the truth. When you go to sleep and your mind takes a back seat, it's dormant, it's there, but it's dormant. What comes forth is the real self. Again, Freud has his words, the subconscious, the superconscious. This one has this words. Everyone has their words for that state of being. But in traditional Chazal, it's a cholam, the state of a cholam, of a dream, where the self of the person, the real self, and the good self, and the beautiful self, is there. And sometimes Hashem blesses the person, and it comes to the floor, and it's revealed. And when that happens, you can experience something that is awesome and truthful and very special. So the Yidden figured, why should we be up to get the Torah? Well, we're going to ask ourselves questions, maybe. What's written in Torah? How do I know? And why? And maybe. And you know, us good brothers and sisters, we have all kinds of pilpulim and arguments. And so they didn't want to have any of that rhetoric, any of that conflict, any of that divisiveness the night before they got the Torah. What did they say? We're going to go to sleep. When we go to sleep, our sleep, they went to sleep, in other words, with a holy thought. They didn't go to sleep because they wanted their Yetzer Hara and Nefesh Habamis to indulge in sleeping. No. They would have rather have stayed up. They understood that you stay up, you're getting such a gift, the Torah, you want to be awake. However, they also understood that the mind gets in the way, so they made a decision. Let's go to sleep, put the mind to sleep, and let's experience the truth, and that's the best preparation for the Torah. That's a basic explanation that's given for why we stay up the night of Shavous. Comes along the Rebbe and he asks, if that's the case, so they were justified in going to sleep, Moshe. So why is it that we stay up today? And what does it say? Why do we stay up? We're doing a tikkun. We're rectifying what our ancestors did, which was wrong. It wasn't wrong. We just explained at great length that what they did was justified and necessary to experience Matan Torah in its genuine divine state of purity. So here the Rebbe explains, based on the teachings of Hasidus, that they made one mistake, and it was a big mistake, and because of this mistake, we stay up and we rectify it by staying up and learning and saying tikkun. Their mistake is that Hashem says, you're right, the dream state is the highest state, but I want you to experience the dream state not asleep, but awake. And that's a very, very difficult thing. To be awake and yet at the same time have the high and the energy of purity that you have when you're asleep. And why is that? Why is that the ultimate objective, Baruch? Because if you understand what Hashem does, which is create a world, put us here, and he says, I know that there are challenges, but it's for your betterment. It's to challenge you to be better. So we have to make what's called a dira b'tachtonim. Now, the Alter Rebbe brings this in chapter 36 in Tanya. Nesava Kodesh Baruch Hu, God had a taiva, liyasloi yisbarach, liyasloi dira b'tachtonim. That we should make a dira, an apartment, a home, b'tachtonim, in the lowest worlds. Not a dira be'elyonim, not a dira be'malochim, not a dira be'neshamis, but rather right here. And Hashem says that this is what satisfies and completes and perfects my taiva. So it is our job to be in the world, and when you're in the world, if you're asleep, it's like being asleep at the wheel. You're in big trouble. You have to be very awake when you're in the world. You have to be very conscious and alert to everything, not only for protection, but more so for perfection. There's protection and there's perfection. So protecting yourself is the attitude of, let me stay to myself, like we have been quarantined, and protect ourselves from the virus, right? You're protecting yourself. Then there is something better, which is perfection, that we don't we don't isolate ourselves, but we go into the world, and we make the world for adira b'tachtoinim, which of course is the shita that Lubavitch Chabad has argued and positioned for years, not just from the previous Rebbes coming to America when it became very evident and obvious that's the way to save Judaism, but even the Alter Rebbe, what I quoted before, is from a medrash that the Alter Rebbe quotes in chapter 36 in Tanya. That means 200 years ago, the Alter Rebbe laid the foundation for the method of Yiddishkeit vis-a-vis the way Chabad practices that Judaism, which parenthetically is a response to the age-old argument. I'm writing about this, that's why it's on my mind, that there were those that said that the previous Rebbe and the Rebbe changed the way Lubavitch used to be. Lubavitch was a very closed, sheltered, small group to themselves, and all of a sudden the previous Rebbe, coming to America, he opened it up to everyone, and the Rebbe took it, of course, to lengths beyond anyone's imagination, and this is what they called new Lubavitch versus old Lubavitch. So what they failed to see is that the Alter Rebbe, in chapter 36, you don't have to be a professor and an academic for it, says clearly what, he quotes the Medrash, and he says this is the objective. Except that during his time and subsequent generations till the previous Rebbe, the world was not yet ready for the same type of dissemination that began in the 1940s in America. It's like, I heard from my mashpir, Rabbi Yoel Kahn, a professor from Emory University, Professor Don Seaman, a good friend of mine. I brought him to Rabbi Yoel Kahn for an interview, and they spoke in Hebrew, and it's recorded actually. I made a video of it. So one of the questions he asks is this question: where in the Chabad philosophy do we see outreach as an integral part? Seemingly, if you study the early writings of the Rabbeim, it doesn't speak, outwardly about this type of approach. So Rabbi Yoel told him he gave him the following example. He said the Rebbe in the 1980s spoke about the importance of publicizing Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, the 7 universal laws for non-Jews. And the Rebbe really encouraged this. Okay? So he asked the professor, why did it take till 1983 or 84 for him to do that? Why didn't he speak about it in 1955? The same 7 universal laws that the Rambam mentions, that they haven't changed. So the Rebbe said, Rabbi Yoel said that he grew up in Tel Aviv in the 1940s. There's a famous street there called Allenby Street. Everyone knows the street, Allenby Street. So he says, imagine we would go to Allenby Street and start talking to people about the 7 universal laws. They would say that you're out of your mind. It's like, here we had a Holocaust and we survived and we have our own issues. What are you reaching out to Goyim now? Like all of a sudden, In other words, the street was not a vessel for that message. And Rabbi Yoel said, not only is it because the street wasn't a vessel, that means that from on high, it wasn't the right time. So the same idea as, let's say, with Chanukah and Purim. Why Chanukah? If Chanukah is so gewaldig and Purim is so awesome and all that, why doesn't the Torah say we should celebrate Chanukah and Purim? And to say that it's a historical fact, that's frankly heresy. The historical fact is a result of a reality on high that had to take place at the time. And because of that, the history came about the way it came about. But it doesn't begin with the history. That's the way an academic looks at Torah. That's the way other movements that took out things from the Torah over the years. That's the way they look at it. But a Torah from Jew knows that the truth is, it all begins in heaven. It's all godliness. It's divinity, and it plays itself out in the historical domain. So, whether it's Hanukkah and Purim, excuse me, whether it's the 7 universal mitzvahs not publicizing and not doing anything about it in the 1940s or 50s, whatever, but rather in 1983. What happened in 1983? I can't tell you what happened in 83, but obviously this particular tzaddik saw that from on high the world needs this now and the world is ready. And the truth is we could actually support it logically too, because there were many things changing in world consciousness, and the world was more receptive for a message to go out and publicize 7 universal laws. So why do I say that? Because the same is with the Alter Rebbe's message of making Adira B'Tachtoinim. The Alter Rebbe already said it 200 years ago and wrote it in his Tanya, chapter 36. Everyone can look there as though it's black and white clear. The manifestation of that in a way that kind of went to the streets, the time was not right until we came to America or to Eretz Yisrael when there was freedom, because we were suffering and in fights and wars for 450 years. Only when Yidden came to Eretz Yisrael post-Holocaust and to America, etc., when freedom began and we could relax and breathe, were we able to, and not able, and it was necessary at that time to reach out and share the message. So all of this I was saying to explain why the Yidden's machshava, their thought, the Jews' thought of going to sleep on God to get the Torah, thinking that's the best preparation spiritually, was wrong, because the message that Hashem wanted specifically when he gave the Torah was be awake. Be awake. Because the awake state is where the objective is. What must you bring into the awake state? The dream reality. But where does the dream reality become real? In the awake state, not in the sleep state. Because in the sleep state, at the end of the day, you're asleep. Right, bottom line. Are you sleeping or you're awake? You're sleeping. So you're telling me you have this experience, but we have nothing from it. You're sleeping. Get out, get up, go out, and let me see you practice your dreamlike state when you're awake. Oh, then you're a knocker. Then you're a big shot. But if you do this when you're asleep, it's small change. And we see practically.
There's no action, right, Rob?
Right. There's no action.
There's no action.
Right. So, and we see that those that were very holy to themselves, there's an expression that's in the community of Europe for sure, a tzaddik in pelts. You know what a pelts is? A pelts is a fur coat. A good Russian fur coat, right? It's freezing outside. A tzaddik is a holy person. When a tzaddik puts on a fur coat, he's covered with the coat. But only he's covered. What about the person to the right and the left? They're freezing. You're a tzaddik, but in pelts. You're thinking only about yourself. Don't be a tzaddik in pelts. We have enough tzaddikim in pelts. Go out, take your fur coat, open it up, and give it to someone else, or bring a few other people under your coat. The message is clear. So this is why this answers the question. This is why the whole idea of Shavous is to stay up, to rectify the mistake that was done so many years ago, and it made damage. Don't think it didn't make damage. It's interesting. Everyone, all from Jews, try to stay up Shavuos night, right? Or up Shavuos night. I don't know how many understand what's going on here. In other words, usually in the literature world, we're learning Torah to prepare for Matan Torah. That's also true. But that's not the reason. What's the reason? The reason for staying up has a reason. So the reason requires you should do something. Okay, staying up and learning is being up, but invite a few people to learn with you. And they do that. And today I see on the Zoom, there's classes before Shavous, and, Baruch Hashem, we've come to a place where there is outreach, not just, in Chabad, but in most groups. I mean, for the Belzer Hasidim, which is a very Hasidic group and was very, very sheltered into themselves, for them to open up and invite others that are not bells into their community, and then do things that are, outreach oriented. It's an amazing chiddush. They're not yet Esha Torah or Sameach or Chabad, but still, from where they're coming from, like we've discussed, to do outreach is great. And today it's fashionable. You want 1 second, Moshe. You want to score points? Do outreach. So everyone does outreach. Baruch Hashem. Yes, Moshe.
Rabbi Dalton, let me ask you a question. Can you speak for a moment about the connection we see in Chabad, especially, but not just Chabad, but other chugs, other chugim, other groups that are connected, to Kabbalah, Nister, etc. The significance, the importance of staying up all night on Leil Shana Rabbah, Leil Shvi Shal Pesach, and Leil Shavous, and we see that it's it's obviously universal. People stay up Leil Shavous. Much fewer stay up Leil Shvi Shal Pesach and Leil Shana Rabbah, and yet we see that it's a mitzvah d'oraisa on Seder night to be misaper, right? Siyat Mitzrayim. It is that's of all four, that's the only one where it's like there's a mitzvah d'oraisa. But we see that's the one where it's the hardest to stay up all night in a certain sense, Leil Seder. So I'm just curious.
Wait. Before the perspective, we need to get the facts right. It doesn't say anywhere you have to be up Leil Seder all night. Leil Seder does not equal Shvi Shal Pesach. One is the first, and the one is the seventh. It's two different nights.
Okay, right. No, of course. And what I'm saying though is that of all 4 nights, the only one where it's a mitzvah
all three nights.
No. When I say all 4, I'm saying you're right. Leil Seder is not the same. We don't have a minig to stay up all night.
Exactly.
I'm saying that if a person did stay up all night and he wasn't engaged in Sipur Mitzrayim, it would be a mitzvah. He'd be fulfilling mitzvah d'oraisa.
Yes.
Whereas the other three are much more connected to the realm of Nister, and there's no mitzvah d'oraisa that's associated with Shvi Shal Pesach, Leil Shana Rabbah, and Shavous. That's all I'm.
Okay. So right. Okay. So my response is twofold. One is that the emphasis Leil Seder Sipir Yetzias Mitzrayim, like you said, whether you're up till all night or half a night, regardless, that's not the end. You have to remove from your thinking process that it's associated with staying up at night. It's not associated with staying up at night. It's associated with one thing and one thing only. Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. For an hour is an hour. 7 hours is 7 hours. So that's one nekuda that I think you have to kind of program and reprogram. But nevertheless, the larger point you're making, I understand. In other words, this is about Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim with d'oraisa, and this is a minhagim, and you call Nister, and it's brought down the Svarim that something that we're obligated to do is not as how should I say this? Not as deep, and it doesn't touch the essence of God as something as that you volunteer to do. Which is higher, Shachris, Mincha, or Ma'ariv? So Bapashto, Shachris and Mincha, right? Shema, Shachris, Shachris and Mincha. Ma'ariv, it's brought in Shulchan Aruch, it's a Rishus. It became a Chayiv later. But to begin with, so it's brought down the Sfarim on the contrary. Because it comes from you, it's Hashem values that more. Like we learned in this Maimer earlier, the last few days. Something that you make, although it's a small item, remember you only were learning, to you put effort into it. It's the best and the highest. Now, and to Hashem also, when you exert yourself, because it's not a deraisa, where you have to come to the Seder, and you have to tell the story, because if not, you haven't done the mitzvah, Yetzias Mitzrayim, I don't have to stay up any of those 3 nights, and I volunteer. That's in a way, it's even greater. Also, the fact is that Shavuos, it's like we don't have tangible things that the Torah obligates us to do. You know, the flowers and the cheesecake is not what the Torah tells us to do. Basically, it's about Aseres HaDibros. Basically, can someone experience Shavuos just going to shul or listening to Aseres HaDibros and keeping Yom Tov? Absolutely. You know, again, you gotta know what is din and what is minik, and someone says, I'm not eating no cheesecake, I'm not buying flowers, I'm not decorating my house and my shul, I'm just going to shul, saying Baruch HaKedusha, hearing the Aseres HaDibros, and going home and sleeping for 6 hours. He kept Shavuos. He 100% kept Shavuos. Is it a rich Shavuos? Is it an illuminated Shavuos? Is it a gewaltige Shavuos? For him it is, and for us not. So, I think the psychology is you're looking for things to do that make you feel more like it's one of the Shalosh Regalim. So in the days of the Beis HaMikdash, when you had to walk and schlep and all that and bring karbanos, right? But today it's not that way. So staying up and eating cheesecake and putting flowers is the little that you do to make you feel more Shavuos. I'm giving you a practical answer, Moshe, you know? And that's why it's a commonality by everyone. Litvak, Sfard, Hasidic, makes no difference. Klal Yisrael has this innate thing. What can we do to experience Shavuos? It shouldn't just be 2 days of reading comic books and newspaper, Ami magazines, and Hamodi on the couch. Because that you can do during the week. That's Shavuos, laying on the couch and reading the magazine. No. Oh, you were up all night. You were up a half a night. You sat ticking or you learned. And then if you went to the mikveh in the morning at 5 a.m., oh, you know, it just gives you a sense there's something here. And thirdly, and so Pesach night, Moshe, Leil Pesach, just sitting and eating matzah mor and having your stomach churn and drink 4 cups of wine, believe me, we all know until you get to that, you're starving and then your kids are driving you nuts, you know. I mean, you got to do nothing, just celebrate the Yom Tov, and you feel it's Yom Tov, and after cleaning and schlepping for weeks and then eating matzah, right? But you don't have that Shavuos. Hoshana Rabbah is the same way. Here we are, Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, dancing and singing and having parties and being freilach. And here comes the special day, the greatest day of joy, Simchas Torah, Shmiras Simchas Torah. Hoshana Rabbah, it's a special day. I always think about Hoshana Rabbah. To me, Hoshana Rabbah is like, in a way, it's the day to me in the calendar that's most not realized. And you know what kind of holy day? So the other Hasidim, they wear the kittel and they daven a nusach of Yom Tov. In Chabad, we just wear whatever we're wearing during Chol Hamoed, which is a kapota for many, and davening was the regular davening. So you didn't have, so what do? Clap 5 times. What I'm saying is, so Hoshana Rabbah 2 is, and it's brought down in the holiness of Hoshana Rabbah that settle. I mean, it's like the last day of the Chasima al Blima, like we say in the Tefillah. Excuse me, in the Tefillahs. So Hoshana Rabbah also needs that, that staying up to make it into a significant day and realize, guys, what's going on. And finally, just 1 second, finally, the third, what was the third day? Hoshana Rabbah, Shvi Shel Pesach. Shvi Shel Pesach too. Shvi Shel Pesach happens to be a Yom Tov, but Shvi Shel Pesach is like we're celebrating 8 days Pesach. So the Shvi Shel Pesach significance is swallowed by the Pesach significance. We celebrate 8 days we're eating the same matzah on the Shvi Shel Pesach like we ate on the first and second day. So to us it's one hemshech. No, come along Chazal and say, wait a minute. You guys would have been drowned. You would have never made it here. I did a great miracle for you. Oh. And by the way, just for the record, Shvi Shel Pesach, you don't have to be up all night. That's also not the case. Some do. But Shvi Shel Pesach, many people just celebrate till after midnight and then they pour some water or they go down. So they're different minhagim. But even will accept that one should be up Shvi Shel Pesach night. And again, I'm saying even because it's not by everyone that way. You should know. I believe that one of the reasons is to put an emphasis on the Shvi Shel Pesach. That would be my sermon-like answer to your question if I wasn't, because it's a very good question. And again, there are sources in the Sfarim for the special kedusha of Shvi Shel Pesach, Hoshana Rabbah, and Shavous night. Okay, let's now take Yoni and then anyone else. Go ahead.
So I just have a question. If Shavuos night, the tikkun is the tikkun for the Yidden, for the Yidden many years ago.
Yeah.
So my question is, but you just said that it was a mistake. They made a mistake, but it was a mistake with the best of intentions.
That's right.
They really had good intentions. So we're all human and we all make mistakes. That's
okay.
So doesn't Hashem understand, like, okay, they had good intentions, they made a mistake. It's a mistake. It wasn't an Aveira, they tried to do a mitzvah, and instead I wouldn't call it, you would call it an Aveira? Was mamash an Aveira?
No, it's not an Aveira. A mistake. It's not an Aveira, but they missed the point. And, what's the expression? The greater you are, the harder to fall, something like that. Moshe Rabbeinu, instead of talking to the rock, hits the rock. For him, it's the greatest sin, and he's punished. He can't go into Eretz Yisrael. Or the famous story of Reb Mendel Riminover, the Hasidic Rebbe, Reb Nachum Mendel of Rimonov. He's walking back from Tashlich, and his student, Reb Naftali Ropshitzer, the Ropshitzer, the holy Ropshitzer, is walking towards the pond to do Tashlich, and he sees his Rebbe running towards him. He says, the Rebbe sees the Talmud, the student, running towards him, right? So he says, why are you running? Naftali, why are you running? So he says, Rebbe, I'm running to pick up your Averis. You just threw out all your Averis in the pond, in the Tashlich. I'd like to have them. And you know why? Because for him, they were mitzvahs. And it's this vart is so true, Baruch, in everyone. It's so true. What for one person is considered an Avera, like you say, or an imperfection, or a mistake, for another is Gevaldik. So, Yoni, here's my answer to your good question. That the Yidden were at a very special level. They're getting the Torah. Could you imagine? You think that they were eating Frankfurters the week before? Shleishes Me'akbala. We're in it now. They had to separate. No women. No money. 3 days of just thinking about Hashem. And that comes after the first day. Vayichon Sham Yisrael neged Har. They camped at the mountain, all united. And after the second day, V'hoya Mamlechas Koyanim, you should be a priestly nation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of preparation. After 49 days of counting the Omer of the Omer, and after 7 days of Pesach, so this is like 2 months. They're really, and all of a sudden they go to sleep on Hashem. So you understand, the slap in the face for them is not, for us it wouldn't be a slap in the face, because our entire preparation is half-baked and everything else. I don't want to be self-deprecating, but you know what I'm saying. You're talking about here to an intense experience they had for 2 months, and they go to sleep. It's the biggest chutzpah. Just think of, someone tells you, Yoni, tomorrow you got to be up 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm giving you $1 million, or I'm giving you 1,000,000 brachas. I'm giving you something that, is gewaldig. You sleep in. You know what kind of chutzpah that is? You're going to come. Sorry, I slept in. Well, you're a jerk, excuse me, and you're an outcast, and away. Okay? That's what happened. That's exactly what happened. So the punch that Hashem got from the Yidden at the time was a bad punch. So don't call it an Avera, but it was really chutzpah. Outrageous. So yes, their intent was good, but at the end of the day, you missed the point. And I'm glad you brought this up, because this is very important. This is a very important point. And what's the point? You can have the best of intentions, but if you're not in sync with what Hashem wants, you're out the door. Okay? And this is, we have some of this in our Jewish world today. The best of intentions, but you're not in sync with what Hashem wants now. And this is a message. So it's a very important message. So what we're doing is, it's not that you say, can Hashem give them some slack? Can Hashem not forgive them? It's an oxymoron. If you're godly and you accept Hashem, then do what He wants. It's exactly what we're learning in the Maimer. Be bottled to the Baal HaRatzain. Enough already with your own interpretation and your own understanding. That's exactly what the Jews did. They were bottled to the Ratzain, so that according to them, the best way to get the will of Hashem is to go to sleep on God. Guess what? Good thought, but it's not what I want now. What I want now is continue being up, anticipating the moment. When am I going to have this? The Sfiras HaOmer, right? The counting. What does the Ran say in the Durham? You know the Ran says in the Durham that the counting of the Omer is because we're counting down 40 days, 41 days, 42, counting down. It's like, you put the calendar on the refrigerator, the magnet that you type off. When's my son or daughter coming home from camp? Or coming home from yeshiva, coming back home from college, My daughter, she does that. She when she knows something's coming up, she talks about it, and she marks it off, and she checks it off. When am I going to have that? You're conscious, you're alert, not you go to sleep. So it was a very, very big issue, and therefore we have an opportunity to rectify that. So I think from that perspective, you'll understand that this wasn't just and this is a little issue, and this is when you learn Chassidus, it makes you aware that the little things is where it counts. The big things are given. That's why I told you. It's a chayv. Shachris and Mincha is a chayv. Ma'ariv and Shus is a little thing, but Ma'ariv, big deal. Ma'ariv. Yes, Moshe.
I was going to say, so the practical tachlis solution is someone stays up for the night till it's a shachar, till the sunrise.
Yes.
And then if they decide to go to sleep, or they stay up the whole time in daven, of course. But at least to stay up until sunrise, correct? Is that what you're saying? That's
to stay up till dawn. To stay up till dawn. You don't have to stay up till sunrise. to dawn.
Okay.
If you want to daven, you're supposed to daven Shmon Esrei by sunrise. And then you stay to sunrise. But if you want to go to sleep at dawn and sleep for 3-4 hours and get up and before Shema and say Shema, you could do that. And like I think Yoni or Moshe we asked you last week, what Chabad generally does it that way. Again, say it's a minig. It's not a minig, but we prefer davening with a normal minyan at a normal time, but you need to rest, so you lay down, as soon as you're able to.
Right.
Baruch, you want to say something? I see you're thinking.
Yeah. I didn't quite understand I understand the whole idea about being awake. That's clear. But what is this like? You're bringing down the stream like a state when you're awake. Like what's the point? I mean, you need to be cognizant of what's going on.
It doesn't mean to say that Baruch. It doesn't mean to say here I am. We're awake now, and all of a sudden I go into a dream. That's not what it means. That's not what did you mean? The experience that a person has during a dreamlike state. That experience should be experienced while you're awake.
Okay.
Hillel might have some, psychological words for what I'm saying. I don't know. Hillel, do you have any thoughts on what that would be in psychological terms?
There are many. The framework in which I tend to understand things like that is the framework of what's called a trance experience. Which I define as something which is that we normally have, limited ways in which we use our mind, and in a trance, something moves us outside the normal way of moving our mind. So we're in an altered and unusual state of consciousness. And at that time, the therapeutic idea behind it is that we're more open to suggestion. And I think the spiritual idea of that is similar. That those kinds of experiences allow us to be imprinted more deeply and more fully.
Right. So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is that it's and this would speak to Baruch's question. It's not that I'm alert and I'm experiencing more of alertness. I'm experiencing what you call the trance, meaning something that's unusual and not normally experienced, and I have that experience now. Is that and you said you're saying that it expresses itself in being open to suggestions. Is that what you said?
That's right. Well, therapeutically, that's the idea behind using hypnosis as like a therapeutic tool. Is that it moves us outside of our the ordinary boundaries of how we use our minds. But it also really goes as a metaphor for a Kabbalah Satorah experience as well. That we tend to take everything in and filter it in very narrow ways. And the opportunity on Shavous is to open ourselves up to a larger reality of Kabbalah Satorah in a fuller and larger way with other parts of us and other parts of other states of consciousness, other aspects of our mind and our awareness.
I remind myself now also that this isn't just esoteric Kabbalah. There's a Chazal. It's brought in a Tosfos. I forget which Masechta now. I think it's a Nida, but the Chazal say that the Chachamim, when they determine whether a certain color of a woman's stain is this way or that way, the Chazal say it changes the Metzias. It's a Tosfos. This isn't Kabbalah, So we see in Chazal that type of thinking. In other words, here I am. I'm awake. I'm in the world. I have a color. It's a question whether it's need the blood or not need the blood, the color. And the question is, how did it happen? And the Chazal say, because the Chazal made the ruling, so it happens that way. I mean, what does one have to do with the other? But that's what they say. Another thing I remind myself of is the story with I think Hillel, you once shared it, that there's a story with one of the great tzaddikim. Maybe it was one of your ancestors who held sugar cubes in his hand. You know that story?
Yeah, that was Avram Stratton.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Can you say the story?
Yeah. Hillel, say the story.
It's a great story.
Say
so,
the
when the Divrei Chaim Chalversham Assange was a young man, he was going to visit the Rebbes. One of the Alter Tzaddikim of the time was my ancestor Avram of Stratton.
Okay.
He was one of four sons of Yehuda Tzvi of Stratton, and he continued the Rabbista in Stratton, the town of Stratton in Ukraine. And the Divrei Chaim was like wanted to see how tzaddikim did things, the little things how they handled things. And coffee had been newly introduced in Europe. And it was like what we would call Turkish coffee today, very bitter, very, very strong. So normally the people would have it with sugar. So they're drinking coffee together, and the Divrei Chaim sees that Avram Stratner doesn't put any sugar in his coffee. And he says the Rebbe doesn't. He comments the Rebbe doesn't put sugar in his coffee. And the Stratner opens his hand and there's a sugar cube there, and he says to him, "You should know something. That the only reason our senses are limited, the only reason we only see out of our eyes and only hear out of our ears, is because of the hate of eating from the Pri-Eitz Hadas." He says, and when a person has rectified the pagam of eating of the Pri-Eitz Hadas in every limb in their body, he says you can even taste sugar in your hands.
Beautiful.
Yonason, did you ever have that experience, Yonason? But in all seriousness, Baruch. Okay. Well, Baruch Hashem. But so I mean, he was a great tzaddik. But I'm just showing you that when you connect to a certain level of consciousness and reality and holiness, then and that's the objective. The objective is to be alert, to be in the world, and in the world to experience that. So I hope these examples, Baruch, and there are more examples, but this is the whole thing, Remember, again, a tzaddik in pelts is no big deal. There are plenty of those. The big objective is go out into the field. Wherever. It doesn't mean you have to go to, Timbuktu, You don't have to go to Iran and open a Chabad house. You can open a Chabad house on your block. You can open a Chabad house on Dolev, Baruch, where you live. Right? You know how? You go and you smile to a person, and you talk to a person, and you invite him to learn some Torah, and you bring him to a meal. Believe me, that's the biggest Chabad house, because a Chabad house does it in a grandiose way. They have a building, they have people, But the Nakuda is the same. And that's the Nakuda of Yiddishkeit, and that's the whole Nakuda of Shavous. So everyone should have the previous Rebbe that we've been learning his Maimorim. The previous Rebbe would wish, the wish that he gave to Yidden for Shavous was Kabbalah HaTorah, receive the Torah, besimcha, with simcha, ubepnimius. It should get into your kishkis, deep inside, pnimis, and that's a beautiful bracha and an important bracha, and we wish each other that. So we wish each other that we should receive the Torah, besimcha or pnimius, and when we come back to learn on Sunday, we will each feel that we went through that transformation, and Baruch, and when I'll see you Shem Sunday learning, I'll see that you had this trans experience.
Yeah, I want to look like I'm tripping.
Anyway, guys, have a great Yom Tif and a great Shabbos, and only good things. Chag Sameach. Take care. Bye-bye. 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 Thank you.